Hey quilters, it's Patti Carey of Patti's Patchwork. Welcome to my sewing studio and the With Glowing Hearts Quilt-along event, celebrating the 10th anniversary of Northcott's iconic Stonehenge O Canada collection. We are already at month 9. All of our blocks are done and it's time to assemble them into a quilt top and add our borders. I've got some great tips to share with you, so let's get started. This month we're using the last of our fabrics, fabric O for the cornerstones, N for the sashing, and P and Q for doing the panel option. Let's start with that panel option. We'll do the sections above and below the panel. They are essentially 9 patch units comprised of 2 blocks plus sashing and cornerstone pieces, and we'll chain piece them together. I keep my sashing and cornerstone pieces on the bed of my machine and use them as I need when I'm doing the assembly of these sections. Our first column is a wide column. It's a sashing block sashing column, and we're adding a narrow column, a cornerstone sashing cornerstone column to it. And I'll chain piece these together, keeping all of the pieces aligned at both ends. Adding my third row of pieces, and then I can add my third column, which is another wide column. It is a sashing block column. So I add those onto the center column, and I'll press the seams toward the sashing pieces so that all of my seams will nest beautifully when I go to sew the rows together. Press those seams regardless of whether it's a sashing or block or cornerstone. I press them towards the sashing. Now when I sew the rows together, the columns will nest beautifully at those intersections of the cornerstones. Then I add these onto my framed trimmed panel section to the top and bottom after I've pressed the seams toward the sashing. I arrange the blocks down each side, stacking them from last row to first row. I put a tag, clip it to the top, then I flip my pile face down with the clip still at the top, reach back, grab the tag, and reclip it on. This keeps my blocks correctly aligned and in the correct rotation. So clip the tag to the top, flip my pile from left to right face down, make sure the clip is still at the top, and reclip it on. These side sections are essentially 3 columns. One of the columns is a block sashing column, and the other 2 columns are cornerstone sashing columns. I alternate the block and sashing rows as I'm sewing these columns together, sewing my stack of blocks together. Every time I have an in-between row, an alternate row, it is a sashing row, and I'll add a cornerstone. I make my blocks fit my sashing pieces. This is critical to allowing my quilt to lay flat. And then I add the pieces, the cornerstone sashing pieces for column 3 to the pieces in column 2, and I'll press the seams toward the sashing. Again, this will allow my seams to nest when I sew these rows together now. Then I add these to the left and right sides of my quilt, and then I can add my border pieces. Our quilt is ready to be quilted. Let's move on to the all blocks version. I arrange my blocks in 5 rows of 4. Then I stack them from last row to first row, put a clip at the top of the pile with a tag, and flip that pile over so that the clip is still at the top. Then I reach behind, grab the tag, and reclip it onto the top. Stack from bottom to top, clip the tag to the top, flip the pile over, making sure the clip is still at the top, and reclip it onto the back of the stack. This keeps all of the blocks correctly aligned and in the correct rotation for my quilt. I can take these 4 stacks to the machine, and I'm ready to assemble my quilt top. This quilt is essentially 9 columns and 11 rows, even though we've only collected 4 columns of blocks. That is because the alternate rows and columns are sashing rows. So I start with column 1, which is a narrow column comprised of sashing and cornerstone pieces, and I'm adding column 2, which is a wide column comprised of block and sashing pieces. So here I'm adding my column 2 block onto my column 1 sashing. And then the next row is going to be a sashing row added onto a cornerstone. I work my way through my stack of blocks. I make the blocks fit the sashing pieces as I am sewing the blocks together. I control the fabric, I do not let it control me. I work my way through my first stack of blocks. By the time I'm done, I will have added 5 rows of blocks and 6 rows of sashing. Just chain piecing them all together, just like we did with our blocks when we assembled them each month. It makes really quick work. I'll press my seams toward the sashing. Then I go ahead and add column 3, which is an alternate row, an alternate column, before I add my second stack of blocks. Column 3 is a narrow column. Column 4, which I use the second stack of blocks, is a wide column. By the time I'm done, all of my columns, all of the stacks of blocks will be added, and all of my sashing and cornerstone pieces will be used up. Now it's simply a case of sewing the rows, which I do, and then add my borders, and our quilt is ready to be quilted. My blocks are assembled and my borders are on. All that's left is the quilting. Now it's your turn. Assemble your blocks, put your borders on, then snap a photo of your finished quilt top and head on over to Northcott's Instagram page to share it for your chance at some fabulous prizes. Then join me back here next month, the last month, as I share some ideas on quilting and also my tips on binding. Take care, and we'll see you next month.